Malik froze outside my bedroom with 2 grocery bags cutting red lines into his fingers. "I'm gay, Nia," I said into my phone, lowering my voice even though I thought I was alone. Not confused, not experimenting, and definitely not interested in whatever man Denise wants to set me up with. My sister laughed through the speaker, tinny beneath the hum of my desk fan. I smiled and turned toward the window, where neon from the laundromat across the street painted the glass pink and blue. A floorboard creaked behind me. By the time I opened my door, the hallway was empty, but 2 paper bags sat on the kitchen counter. Cold air spilled from the open refrigerator, carrying the sharp scent of oranges and cilantro. Malik. His bedroom door clicked shut. That was the first strange thing. The second happened at breakfast. Malik usually stole half my coffee and complained that I made it strong enough to remove paint. That morning, he stood beneath the hard white kitchen light with both hands wrapped around his own untouched mug. When I entered, his gaze dropped so quickly that coffee sloshed over his knuckles. "Morning," I said. "Morning." He reached for a dish towel without looking at me. The refrigerator motor buzzed between us. I opened the pantry and found my favorite cinnamon cereal on the middle shelf. We had run out 3 days earlier. Beside it sat the almond creamer I only bought when it was on sale. "You went shopping?" "We needed food." "You hate that cereal." "Then I won't eat it." His answer came too fast. He wiped the same patch of counter until the laminate squeaked. I watched his shoulders, broad beneath a faded gray t-shirt, tighten when I stepped closer. "Did I do something?" "No, did you?" His hand stopped. For 1 second, he looked at me, not at my face, exactly, but somewhere near my left ear. "No." Then he carried his full mug into his room and closed the door with painful care. Over the next 4 days, Malik became an expert at disappearing while leaving evidence everywhere. If I entered the living room, he suddenly remembered laundry. If I sat beside him on the couch, he checked his phone and moved to the armchair. Yet my car's low tire was filled before I left for work. The loose handle on my bathroom cabinet stopped rattling. When I came home late Thursday, my porch light was on. The chain had been left unlatched for me, and a covered plate waited in the microwave. A yellow sticky note clung to it in Malik's blocky handwriting. "You forget dinner when you're busy. Heat for 2 minutes." I found him at the kitchen sink, rinsing a glass beneath warm amber light. Garlic and black pepper still hung in the air. "You've barely spoken to me all week," I said, holding up the note. "But you made me dinner." Water struck the steel basin in a steady hiss. "There were leftovers." "You cooked my favorite pasta." "Coincidence." "And fixed my tire?" "It was low." "My cabinet." He shut off the faucet. Silence expanded through the apartment, broken only by the wall clock ticking above us. I waited for him to turn around. He didn't. The back of his neck had gone red. "Malik, did you hear me on the phone Sunday?" His fingers tightened around the glass until his knuckles paled. That was answer enough. Something small and private inside me snapped shut. I set the plate down. "You could have told me." "I wasn't listening." "But you heard." "Yes." The words scraped out of him. I studied the rigid line of his spine, the careful distance he kept between us. "Does knowing I'm gay make you uncomfortable?" He finally faced me. His mouth opened, but no sound came. The refrigerator hummed. A siren wailed several blocks away, then faded. Malik looked as if the truth were pressing against his teeth, and he was using every ounce of strength to hold it back. "It changes things," he said at last. "What things?" He glanced at the untouched dinner, then at the sticky note still pinched between my fingers. His eyes reached mine for half a heartbeat before dropping again. "I don't know how to act around you anymore." He retreated to his room, leaving me beneath the kitchen light with a cold plate and a question I couldn't shake. If Malik wanted distance, why was he paying closer attention to me than ever? Rain rattled against the fire escape at 6:30, sharp as dry beans thrown across a metal tray. My phone lit the dim kitchen with a message from Malik. "Don't take the bus. I'm picking you up." Before I could ask why, another bubble appeared. "Shifted my schedule. Be outside at 7. The apartment smelled of coffee and wet pavement when he arrived, 10 minutes early, drumming his fingers against the steering wheel while the heater breathed lukewarm air through the vents. "Since when do you start work this late?" I asked, fastening my seatbelt. "Since today." He kept his eyes on the rain-blurred windshield. The next morning, he drove me again. By Friday, his travel mug had become a permanent fixture in the cup holder, and my preferred radio station was already playing whenever I climbed in. He claimed the new schedule was convenient, though it forced him to answer work calls from the car and eat breakfast from foil wrappers. Every evening, he was waiting at the curb before I came outside. When I asked what had changed, he tapped the steering wheel and said, "Traffic patterns." The answer might have survived if Friday night hadn't smelled like vanilla perfume and burnt hairspray. I was standing before the hallway mirror, fastening a silver earring, when Malik emerged from his room. His gaze moved from my black dress to the small overnight bag beside my boots. The keys in his hand stopped jingling. "Where are you going?" "Dinner." "With who?" "A woman Denise introduced me to." His jaw tightened. "You don't know her." "That's usually how first dates work." "Denise barely knows her either." "Denise has worked with her for 2 years." Malik set his keys on the entry table too hard. The wooden bowl jumped, sending loose change skittering across its surface. "Where's she taking you?" "A wine bar downtown." "Which one?" I turned from the mirror. "Are you planning to review the menu or run a background check?" A flush climbed above his collar. Outside, tires hissed over the wet street, and cold air leaked through the window frame. "I'm making sure you're safe. You changed your entire schedule to drive me around, and now you're interrogating me about a date." I picked up my coat. "What exactly is this?" "Nothing." "It doesn't look like nothing." "Then stop looking for something that isn't there." His voice landed harder than he seemed to intend. The room went still except for the radiator ticking behind him. I slid one arm into my coat. "Are you jealous?" Malik gave a short laugh with no warmth in it. "Of her?" That wasn't an answer. "No, Nia. I'm not jealous." He bent to gather the scattered coins, but one slipped twice between his fingers. "I just think this is sudden." "You mean dating women is sudden?" His hand stilled over a quarter. "That's not what I said." "You didn't have to." My phone vibrated. My date's car had arrived. I took my bag and opened the door, letting the cool, rain-scented air sweep into the apartment. Malik straightened, blocking none of my path, yet watching me with an intensity that made the narrow hallway feel smaller. "Text me when you get there," he said. "I won't." His face changed by a fraction. "Why not?" "Because you don't get to monitor me while refusing to explain yourself." I stepped into the hall, then looked back at the rigid line of his shoulders and the worry he kept disguising as irritation. "If this isn't jealousy, Malik, then I have to assume it's judgment. And I'm done pretending not to notice." The elevator bell chimed at the end of the corridor. I walked toward it without waiting for his denial, leaving him beside the open door with a choice he could no longer avoid. Tell me what was really wrong, or let me believe the worst. The refrigerator's hum died at 11:17, followed by the soft click of every appliance surrendering at once. Darkness swallowed the apartment, leaving only rain ticking against the windows and the damp asphalt smell drifting through the cracked kitchen window. I had been home from my date for less than 10 minutes. Malik's footsteps crossed the living room, careful against the hardwood. "Stay there," he said. "I know where the flashlight is." "That makes one thing you're willing to explain." A drawer scraped open. Something metal struck the floor, and Malik muttered under his breath before a narrow beam cut through the dark. It caught the edge of his jaw, then dipped away from my face. "How was your date?" "You lost the right to ask." I reached for the flashlight, but he held it tighter. Our hands closed around the same cold aluminum barrel, his knuckles brushing mine. Neither of us released it. "I'm not judging you," he said. The rain pressed harder against the glass. "Then why have you acted like looking at me might expose you to something?" His grip loosened, and I took the flashlight. When I aimed it toward the ceiling, reflected light spread across the room in a dim silver wash. Malik stood beside the couch with rainwater darkening the shoulders of his jacket. "You must have gone out looking for me." "Because it does expose me," he said. "Not the way you think." I waited. The apartment had cooled quickly without power. Goosebumps rose along my arms, and the wet fabric of his jacket gave off the mineral scent of rain. Malik dragged both hands over his face. "When I heard you tell your sister you were gay, I wasn't disgusted. I panicked." "Why?" "Because you said it without apologizing." His voice cracked on the last word. "You sounded like you belonged to yourself." The flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. "And that frightened you." "It made me realize how long I haven't." Malik crossed the space between us, then stopped before closeness became contact. "There are things about me I've buried so deep that I thought they were gone. Hearing you say who you are made them feel real again." "What things?" His mouth opened, but only a rough breath emerged. I set the flashlight on the coffee table, turning it sideways so its beams stretched between us. Say it. I can't. Not all of it. Then say what you can. His eyes finally met mine. I know what it's like to want someone and immediately start calculating what it could cost. Thunder rolled beyond the windows, low enough to vibrate through the floorboards. Malik lifted one hand, hesitated, then touched a loose strand of hair near my cheek. The gesture was lighter than the rain against the glass, but the room seemed to narrow around it. I should have stepped back. Instead, I caught his wrist. His pulse struck fast beneath my fingers. Malik, I whispered. His gaze dropped to my mouth. Mine followed his. The space between us vanished inch by inch, his breath warm against my face, my hand still holding him where he had chosen to touch me. Then I turned my head. His lips stopped beside my cheek without making contact. I released his wrist and stepped beyond the flashlight's pale beam. No, Malik lowered his hand. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for wanting something. Apologize when you make it my job to guess what it is. The power returned in a sudden blaze. Lamps flared, the refrigerator shuddered awake, and Malik stood exposed in the ordinary yellow light, his jacket dripping onto the floor. I picked up the flashlight and switched it off. You've told me this isn't prejudice, I said. Now you have to decide whether your secret matters more than the truth between us. His face went still. For the first time since he overheard me, he did not look away. It doesn't, he said. I just don't know how to tell you without losing what we already have. I moved toward my bedroom, leaving the door open behind me. The question was no longer whether Malik disapproved of who I was. It was whether the secret he feared naming had already crossed the room with us. Fluorescent light washed the conference room in a cold white glare, and the air conditioning pushed the bitter smell of burnt coffee across the polished table. I had just connected my laptop when one of my coworkers glanced at the rainbow pin on my bag and said, maybe keep the personal stuff out of the client meeting. They're traditional. The projector fan word behind me. My bag won't be presenting, I said, keeping one hand on the mouse. A few chairs scraped. Nobody looked up. The glass door opened before I could continue, and Malik stepped inside carrying the portfolio I had forgotten at home. He took in the pin, the lowered faces, and the co-worker's crooked smile. What did you say to her? Malik asked. This is an internal discussion. It sounded like discrimination from the hallway. His voice carried through the open door and into the corridor, where two people had stopped beside the copier. I rose so quickly that my chair rolled backward. Malik, I've got this. He did not hear the warning beneath the words. Nia shouldn't have to hide being gay to make a client comfortable. The copier went silent. Someone outside whispered my name. My coworker folded his arms and said, nobody told her to hide. You told her exactly that. Malik placed the portfolio beside my laptop, his jaw tight. If the client has a problem with who she is, that's their problem. Enough. I stepped between them, the carpet rough beneath my heels. Malik, leave. His eyes found mine at last. Whatever he saw there made him retreat without another word, but the damage traveled faster than the closing door. By lunch, conversation stopped when I entered the break room. A message from Denise appeared on my phone asking whether I was okay because someone had told her there had been a scene. I stared at the screen while the microwave beeped and reheated soup filled the room with the smell of garlic. Malik texted twice. I deleted neither message, but I answered neither. At 4:30, my manager called me into his office. Amber sunlight cut through the blinds in narrow bars, warming one side of my face while the other remained under the ceiling vent. My presentation folder sat unopened on his desk. The client heard about this morning, he said. They're concerned the project environment has become distracting. A coworker made a discriminatory comment to me. I understand. We're reviewing that. He slid the folder back across the wood. Meanwhile, we're assigning the account to someone else. 3 months of research, late dinners, and revised proposals crossed 6 inches of desk and stopped against my fingertips. You're removing me because someone else targeted me? Temporarily. The word landed with the softness of a locked door. Rain had begun by the time I reached the apartment. Water tapped against the windows, and the kitchen smelled of onions sizzling in Malik's skillet. He turned from the stove, relief loosening his shoulders. I called your office to explain. I set the portfolio on the counter hard enough to rattle the utensils. You called them? I wanted them to know you didn't start it. They took me off the project. The skillet hissed behind him. Malik's hand dropped from the wooden spoon. Because of what that guy said? Because your defense turned his comment into office gossip, and then your phone call made it impossible to contain. I was trying to stand up for you. You were trying to feel useful. The refrigerator motor vibrated through the silence. I moved closer, forcing him to hold my gaze. You heard prejudice and decided you should become my voice. You never asked what I needed, who had power over my work, or what your intervention might cost me. I couldn't just watch him treat you that way. Then watch me handle it. Ask before you act. Believe me when I say I've got it. His fingers curled against the counter's chipped edge. I thought protecting you would show you I wasn't ashamed of you. I already believed that after last night. The spoon slipped from his hand and struck the tile with a sharp wooden crack. This isn't about proving you accept me anymore. Whatever you're hiding, you don't get to turn me into the place where you fight it. I switched off the burner as smoke began curling from the pan. From now on, you do not rescue me without my permission. If we're going to keep living together, you'll have to learn the difference between caring about me and taking control away from me. Malik stood beside the ruined dinner, rain trembling against the dark glass behind him. This time, the next move was mine, and tomorrow, I would walk back into that office without him. Rainwater ticked from the hem of my coat onto the reception floor, each drop darkening the gray carpet beneath my shoes. The office smelled of burnt coffee and warm printer toner, and behind the frosted conference room glass, muted voices stopped as I passed. I carried a folder instead of the portfolio Malik had returned the day before. Inside were dated emails, the original project assignment, screenshots of the messages that followed the incident, and the company's written non-discrimination policy. My coworker met me beside the copy machine, where paper slid into the tray with dry mechanical snaps. The incident is still under review, she said. Removing me happened before anyone asked for my statement. I placed the folder between us. So I'm submitting it now. Her gaze dropped to the documents. Malik's call complicated this. His call was unauthorized. My treatment here is a separate issue. I requested a formal meeting, documented who had made the discriminatory remark, and asked management to explain in writing why gossip had disqualified me from work I had already earned. The room turned uncomfortably warm while the ventilation hummed overhead. Nobody raised a voice. Nobody needed to. By noon, the removal had become a temporary administrative decision. By 3, after I refused an offer to quietly transfer to another account, the project was mine again. The client files returned to my inbox with a soft electronic chime. There was no apology, only a message confirming that I would lead the presentation as originally scheduled. It was enough for that day. Denise texted while I waited for the elevator. Heard something happened. Are you okay? I typed. I handled it, and watched the doors close on the rows of curious faces behind me. At home, garlic and black pepper hung in the kitchen air, but the stove was cold. Malik sat at the table beneath the amber pendant light, his hands wrapped around a mug he had not touched. You got it back, he said when he saw my laptop bag. I did. His shoulders lowered, though he stayed seated. I'm glad. You respected what I asked. That mattered. The refrigerator clicked off, leaving the apartment so quiet that I could hear his thumb scraping over a chip in the ceramic glaze. I set my keys down. But silence isn't honesty. Malik looked toward the hallway. I pulled out the chair across from him, its wooden legs rasping over the floor. If we keep sharing this apartment, I need the truth. Not another favor. Not another warning about my dates. Not a sentence that stops halfway because you're afraid of what comes after it. His jaw tightened. And if I can't say it, then one of us finds somewhere else to live. The mug struck the table harder than he intended, sending a thin ring of coffee over the rim. For several seconds, he watched it spread across the wood. Then he pressed both palms flat beside it. I'm bisexual. The words were quiet, but nothing in the room softened them. Malik drew one uneven breath. I've known for years. I dated women because that was the part of me nobody questioned. Every time anything else felt real, I buried it before someone could name it. The radiator released a hollow metallic knock. I stayed still, giving him no rescue from what he had chosen to say. When I heard you on the phone, he continued, you sounded free. I didn't know how to be near that without seeing how much of myself I'd hidden. So the strange behavior wasn't disgust. No, his eyes finally met mine. It was recognition. The answer closed the question that had poisoned every room between us, but it opened another. He had explained why my honesty unsettled him. He still had not explained why my date had. The phone vibrated across the kitchen table just after 7, rattling against the wood until Malik caught it beneath his palm. Morning light slipped through the blinds in pale bars, and the coffee between us smelled sharp enough to sting. He looked at the caller's name, then carried the phone into the living room without answering. "It's my father," he said when the ringing stopped. A voicemail arrived seconds later. Malik listened beside the cold window, his shoulders rigid beneath a gray t-shirt. Even from the kitchen, I heard the clipped phrases spilling through the speaker. Confusion, family reputation, a phase that needed correcting. Then came the demand. Malik was expected to tell everyone he had been misunderstood. If he refused, the monthly support keeping his recording studio open would end immediately. The refrigerator hummed into the silence. "How did they find out?" I asked. "My cousin saw something I posted after we talked." Malik locked the screen. "I wrote that hiding doesn't make a person disappear." By noon, he was at the studio, standing beneath fluorescent tubes that buzzed above black acoustic panels. The room smelled of dust, warm circuitry, and the cedar oil he used on the mixing desk. I stayed near the door while Malik called his father back. He placed the phone on speaker, not for me to defend him, but because he no longer wanted the conversation hidden. "Say the post was about a friend," his father instructed. "Say people drew the wrong conclusion. This does not need to become your identity." Malik's fingers curled around the edge of the desk. "It already is my identity. Then fund this life yourself." The call ended with a soft digital click. A moment later, an email confirmed that the transfer scheduled for Friday had been canceled. Malik opened a spreadsheet. The blue light from the monitor hollowed his face as he moved through rent, insurance, utilities, and payroll. Without the family money, the studio had less than 3 weeks. I could have offered my savings. The words rose to my tongue, but I remembered what I had demanded from him. No rescuing without permission. "What do you want to do?" I asked instead. Malik glanced toward the equipment rack. At its center sat a vintage tube compressor with worn silver knobs, the first serious piece of gear he had ever bought. He had once told me he spent 4 years saving for it. "If I apologize, the money comes back." The air conditioner kicked on, sending a cold draft across the concrete floor. "And what does the apology cost?" He looked at the dark phone in his hand. "Every honest thing I said last night." I stepped closer but left the width of a chair between us. "Then choose the loss you can live with. I won't make it for you." For nearly a minute, only the wall clock moved. Malik opened a resale site, photographed the compressor from each side, and typed out the listing. His thumb hovered above the button. Then he pressed it. The item sold before sunset. We packed it in thick foam while traffic hissed over wet pavement outside. Malik ran his hand once across the scratched metal casing before lowering the lid. No speech. No dramatic farewell. Just packing tape tearing through the room with a harsh, final rip. The sale covered 2 months of expenses and bought him time to replace the support with paying clients. It also removed the last leverage his family had over the studio. Back at the apartment, Malik placed the shipping receipt beside the coffee stain from his confession. "I spent years arranging my life so nobody could take anything from me," he said. "Turns out they could because I kept accepting the price. Not anymore." His gaze remained on me longer than the words required. "No, not anymore." I had watched him surrender something irreplaceable rather than deny who he was. Yet one part of his behavior still resisted every explanation he had given me. Recognition accounted for his distance. Fear accounted for his silence. Neither explained why losing the possibility of my date had seemed to hurt him personally. Cold blue light from Malik's laptop washed across the living room, catching on the shipping receipt and the pale ring where his compressor had rested on the studio desk. I stood beside the couch with Denise's latest message glowing on my phone. "If you still want me to set up that date, say the word." Malik came in carrying 2 mugs. The spoon inside mine clicked against ceramic when he noticed the screen. "You don't have to stop dating because things got complicated here," he said. I didn't. I set the phone face down. Denise never arranged it. His fingers tightened around his mug. Coffee trembled against the rim, releasing the bitter smell of Malik's over-roasted beans. "Then why did you let me think she had?" "Because every time I mentioned another woman, you acted like the apartment was on fire." The refrigerator hummed behind us. Outside, tires hissed over rain-dark pavement 6 floors below. Malik placed both mugs on the counter with deliberate care. "That wasn't fair to you." "Neither is answering a question I didn't ask." I stepped between him and the hallway when he tried to retreat. Being bisexual explains why hearing me come out frightened you. It doesn't explain the rides, the staring, or why you looked sick when Denise offered to find me someone. Malik's jaw shifted. Nia, tell me which part was about you. His gaze moved toward the window, where our reflections floated over scattered city lights. All of it. The words landed softly, but the room seemed to contract around them. He reached into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out his phone. After several swipes, he held it toward me. The screen showed an unfinished recording session dated 3 months before the call he had overheard. Its title was simply In, and beneath it sat dozens of short audio tracks. Play the last one, he said. I tapped the file. At first, there was only the faint crackle of an old microphone and Malik breathing. Then a melody filled the room. Quiet piano under the rhythm of cupboard doors, my off-key humming. The double tap I used before entering his studio. Ordinary sounds from our life had been shaped into something warm and careful. His recorded voice entered near the end, then stopped after one unfinished line. I keep building songs around someone I can't ask to stay. The file ended with a soft click. That was recorded before you knew? I asked. Weeks before. Malik took the phone back, but did not erase the track. I was already in love with you. Heat from the untouched coffee gathered between us while rain ticked against the glass. When I heard you say you were gay, I thought the answer had arrived before I found the courage to ask. I assumed there was no place for me in what that meant to you. He pressed his thumb against the dark screen. So I tried to become less obvious. Then I noticed everything more. What time you left. Whether you ate. Who made you smile at your phone. And Denise. Made losing something I'd never had feel real. He looked directly at me now. The rides were excuses for more time. The jealousy was mine. The distance was me trying not to make my feelings your problem. The rest was cowardice dressed up as consideration. The strange weeks rearranged themselves without changing a single detail. His eyes dropping because they lingered too long. His schedule bending around mine. His irritation whenever Denise texted. None of it had begun with disgust. It had begun before he overheard me, with a song he had never intended me to hear. Malik crossed the room and unplugged the laptop. The blue light vanished, leaving only the amber lamp beside the couch. I should have told you before you had to drag it out of me. He slid the computer into its case. You asked for honesty. Now you have it, and you shouldn't have to manage what it does to this apartment. What are you doing? Giving you space to decide, without waking up across the hall from the man who wants an answer. The zipper rasped shut. He carried the case toward his room, where an empty suitcase waited on the bed under the cold white ceiling light. I had finally learned why Malik had acted so strangely. Now he was preparing to leave before I could tell him what the truth had changed for me. Malik, I said. His hand stopped on the bedroom doorframe. Don't pack anything yet. The suitcase wheels clicked against the hardwood as Malik pulled it from the bed, and the sound landed between us like a countdown. Cold air drifted through the cracked window, carrying the wet smell of pavement from the street below. Don't pack anything yet, I repeated. Malik kept one hand wrapped around the handle. Nia, you don't owe me an answer tonight. Then stop deciding what I owe you. I stepped into the bedroom and pushed the suitcase flat before he could open it. The canvas shelf felt rough beneath my palm. You've spent weeks making choices around me without letting me participate, driving me places, getting jealous, pretending you weren't. Now you're choosing to disappear because you think that's kinder. His gaze dropped to my hand. Staying would put pressure on you. Packing before I speak puts pressure on me too. The ceiling fixture buzzed faintly above us. Beyond the wall, a faucet groaned in another apartment, followed by the dull rush of old pipes. Malik released the handle, but he didn't move away. You heard the recording, he said. You know this isn't a harmless crush I can switch off. I know. And you're gay. The word came out carefully, as if it might cut one of us. Yes. So what exactly am I supposed to wait for? I reached past him and closed the bedroom door. The latch clicked, shutting out the amber light from the living room and leaving us beneath the stark white glow. For me to tell you what that label means to me instead of assuming you already know. His jaw tightened. I'm not asking you to rewrite yourself for me. Good, because I'm not. My fingers curled around the suitcase handle. Being gay is how I understand my life. It describes where I found myself, who I've loved, and what I've survived. It is not a rule that erases what I feel when you walk into a room. Malik went completely still. Even the soft scrape of traffic 4 floors below seemed louder. I pulled the suitcase away from him and rolled it toward the wall. Its wheels bumped the baseboard. I was angry because you treated me like a problem to solve. I was afraid your weird behavior meant you saw me differently after finding out. Then I learned you did see me differently, but not because you thought less of me. His lips parted, but I raised a hand. Let me finish. You loved me before that night. You kept taking care of me after it, even when fear turned every decent impulse into something confusing. And when I finally asked for the truth, you gave it to me, even though it cost you your family's money, your equipment, and the safety of hiding. That doesn't mean you have to love me back. No, it doesn't. I crossed the narrow strip of carpet between us. The room smelled faintly of laundry detergent and the cedar blocks Malik kept in his closet. I love you because you're Malik, not because you're a man, not despite your being bisexual, not as an exception I need to apologize for. I love the person who saved the sound of our refrigerator humming because it reminded him of home. I love the idiot who turned our apartment into a song and then tried to leave before I could answer it. His eyes shone beneath the hard ceiling light. Nia, if you're saying this because you're afraid of losing me, I am afraid of losing you. I took the last step. That doesn't make this untrue. My hand closed around the front of his shirt. The cotton was warm and slightly wrinkled beneath my fingers. I gave him enough time to pull back. He didn't. So I kissed him. It was brief, soft, and unmistakable. Malik's breath caught against my cheek, but his hands remained open at his sides until I leaned away. The suitcase stood against the wall, no longer pointed toward the door. Tell me to stop, I whispered. I won't. His voice was rough. But tomorrow morning, when this apartment looks ordinary again, we need to decide what this makes us. I touched my forehead to his as the ceiling light continued its low electric hum. Then stay until morning. This time, when Malik reached for the suitcase, he lowered the handle and left it closed. Morning arrived in layers. The hiss of the radiator, pale sunlight slipping through the blinds, and the bitter smell of coffee spreading through the apartment. I found Malik in the kitchen beside 2 mugs, his suitcase still closed against the living room wall. The ordinary room had returned, but neither of us pretended the night had vanished with the dark. Malik turned off the coffee maker and faced me. I'm not going to act weird anymore. His mouth tightened at the inadequate word. No more deciding what you need without asking. No more hiding behind rides, jealousy, or silence. I wrapped both hands around the warm mug he offered me. Good. Because I'm not asking you to become fearless overnight. What are you asking? For the truth while it's happening. The refrigerator hummed between us. Outside, tires whispered over wet pavement. Malik looked toward the suitcase, then back at me. The truth is that I want to stay. Not just in the apartment. He paused, leaving the choice where I could reach it. I want to try this with you, if you still want that in daylight. My phone vibrated across the counter. Denise's name glowed above a message offering, once again, to arrange a date for me. I turned the screen toward Malik. His jaw shifted, but he didn't ask who it was or reach for the phone. What do you want to do? He asked. The question was small, but it broke the last pattern between us. I typed a reply thanking Denise and telling her I was seeing someone. Then I set the phone face down. I want breakfast with my boyfriend. Malik blinked. Boyfriend? Unless you'd prefer roommate who composes love songs from appliance noises. A laugh escaped him, low and startled, and the tightness around his shoulders finally loosened. Boyfriend works. His phone rang before either of us could move. The word dad filled the screen. Malik stared at it through 2 full rings, then answered and put the call on speaker without looking to me for permission or rescue. His father's voice came clipped and cold, demanding to know whether Malik had reconsidered. Malik rested one hand on the counter. I have. I'm done asking you to fund a version of me that doesn't exist. The line went silent except for faint static. His father warned him that the studio would fail and that no one else would clean up the consequences. Then the consequences are mine, Malik said. So is my life. He ended the call first. His fingers trembled once before flattening against the cool stone countertop. I didn't praise him or promise everything would be easy. I stepped beside him until our shoulders touched, and he chose to remain there. Later, Malik carried the suitcase into his bedroom, unpacked every folded shirt, and returned the empty case to the top shelf of the hall closet. The zipper rasped shut behind it. Then he took his apartment key from the bowl near the door and placed it back on his key ring with a clean metallic click. "I'm staying," he said. "Not because you stopped me, because I choose us." I crossed the narrow space and kissed him again, slowly enough that morning could witness it. This time his hands settled gently at my waist, not claiming, not hesitating, simply answering. When we pulled apart, the coffee had cooled and sunlight had warmed the floorboards beneath our bare feet. Nothing in the apartment had changed, yet nothing needed to hide inside it anymore. Malik had spent weeks acting strange because love had frightened him into silence. Now, with his suitcase unpacked and his truth spoken aloud, he finally became the man who stayed.